네 마음 이해한다.
Today we're gonna tell you the storyline of a movie called The Merciless, from the year 2017. This movie tells us a really complicated friendship story, of two guys, who met in a prison. It was a story full of trust waves, and betrayals. And as I said, it is complicated, so bear with me, please. Now let's get straight into the video, and get confused together. But before we start, please support our channel by subscribing, and click the bell icon for future notifications. Now, let's start. The movie starts at a harbor, where two mafia members named Sung-pil and Kyeong were having lunch. But then suddenly, a Russian mafia approached them, and shot Sung-pil to death. On the other side, a mafia named Han Jae-ho was waiting in his car for the jail release day of his friend, named Jo Hyun-Soo.
내 건데? 내 거는 네 거.
On the other hand, there was Captain Chun In-suk in an office, which turns out to be the office of a mafia leader, named Ko Byung-chul. She was there to arrest the mafia, but then because she had no evidence of their crime, she was unable to do so. Where shortly after, Han and Yoon-soo arrived at the office.
오랜만입니다. 여전히 아름다우셔라.
뉴페이스네?
아줌마, 초면에 반말로 훅 들어오시네.
그래요? 벽 보고 딸딸이 나칠게. 안 그래요, 한 이사님?
Flashback to 3 years earlier, in the Gyeonggi prison. There was a slap tournament between the prisoners, where suddenly Yoon-soo raises his hand to participate in the tournament. And it turns out that the match was also watched by Han. Until Yoon-soo did a cheating punch towards the big guy. And of course, a fight occurs between them.
손바닥으로 네 머리털 존나 없는 새끼야.
Seeing the potential of Yoon-soo, Han then asked him to be one of his subordinates. It then reveals that Han was controlling the prison from the inside, because he managed to defeat all of the strong ones there. And then, he was in control of the tax from cigarettes and drugs dealing inside the prison. He and his subordinate Si-Wan often had a feast in the prison kitchen. Scene shifted to 13 days after Yoon-soo's release day, where the mafia group he was in was having a dinner party, and Yoon-soo as a new guy, was treated specially, on one table with his boss. But Kyeong seems not so comfortable with the sight, which made him approach the table, and pulled out his gun. Then suddenly, Yoon-soo managed to snatch the gun off of him. And then the leader, who was also Kyeong's uncle, came to him and slapped him out of anger. Soon after, in his car, he cried like a baby, and was also laughed at by Han. Back again to the time at the prison, when a high-level gangster named Kim Sung-han was just chosen to be the new leader of the prison, which Han then approaches him at the prison field, and asks him to split the tax income with him, at 50-50 ratio. But Kim then rejected it, and even one of Han's men was beaten down, at the warden's office. And it turns out that the wardens were leaning towards Kim more, because he apparently bribed them more than Han did. Han lost his power, and ended up in the isolation room. Even one of Kim's men tried to stab him from behind, but it was stopped by Yoon-soo almost immediately. Han was starting to lose his power in the prison completely. And right then, Yoon-soo suggested to him a plan to regain his power. And the plan was to take Han's phone with the pictures of the cigarettes all over his cell, and took it to the head warden, and threatened him to send those pictures to the authorities.
사진들 이 아저씨의 동생들 친구들은 우리가 연애가 안 된다.
계장님.
and it was time for Han to avenge Kim for what he did to him. Han tied Kim in the kitchen chair, and then doused him with boiling oil. Even Yoon-soo was unable to see the sight. They then finally revealed that the one who ordered them to assassinate Han was Kyeong-chul, Han's boss. That fact then angered Han, and made him doused Kim with boiling oil even more. Back again at 32 days after Yoon-soo's release day, Kyeong-chul thought that Kim had a cardiac attack, back in the prison. And he was afraid of Han knowing his betrayal. He was startled when a baseball ball broke through his window glass. There he planned to assassinate Han again. But after they locked their deal with the Russian Mafia 3 years earlier, in a police meeting, it reveals that Kyeong-chul was the CEO of Ocean Import, and the head of the Fishermen's Union, and had an underground business of supplying strippers to a Russian nightclub. They also received packages of drugs that were hidden inside of frozen fishes in ice boxes. Chun then suggested the police to sneak in 2 of their officers to solve the case. And the one officer who ordered to sneak into the prison was Yoon-soo. He refuses at first, because he has to be in prison for 3 years. But she then promised a kidney donor for his sick mom. In the prison, he reasons that he was arrested for smuggling prohibited substances through the harbor.
할렐루야. 죽은 거 살려내는 거니까.
방을 옮겨줘요.
내 방이야.
When Kyeong-gu went to the prison for a visit, it turns out that he and Han had planned to assassinate his boss, his own uncle. Han then was also told to investigate Yoon-soo. And a few days later, there was news about the death of Yoon-soo's colleague. And also, his mother. This news shocked Yoon-soo, that he cried, begging to see his mother for the last time. He then called his captain, and asked her for 1 day leave, just to see his mother. But then, for the sake of the mission, Chun rejected his request. At night, Han visited his cell to cheer him up. But then he hit Han instead, and started a fight between them. The next day, the head warden called him over, and gave him permission for a 1 day leave, for his mother's funeral. And it turns out that it was a request made by Han. Even Han also paid for the funeral fee for him. Han then also told a story of him, who had lost his parents when he was 12. When his mother poisoned their dinner, as payback for his father's abusive manner towards her. Han then asked Yoon-soo to work with him, right after he got out of prison. And Yoon-soo suddenly made the shocking confession, that he was actually a cop. Back again at 127 days after Yoon-soo's release day, Yoon-soo went to Captain Choi, to get Kyeong-chul's document stamp. Because he refused to give Yoon-soo the stamp, suddenly. Han and his subordinates then also came to attack them. Yoon-soo looks overwhelmed mid-fight, but then, he manages to end the fight, and finishes it off by hitting the thug's face with his watch. And finally, they managed to get the stamp, and gave it to Kyeong-chul. Soon after, Han and Yoon-soo went to a Russian nightclub. There, Han told Yoon-soo to wait for him, while he was meeting the Russian mafia leader, named Gegard. When Yoon-soo went outside the club, he was suddenly pulled by one of his cop friends, who gave him a watch replacement. And unexpectedly, Han showed up to them, and Yoon-soo reasoned that he was pulled by a perverted guy, when he went outside to pee. In the lift, Han questioned that occurrence, and Yoon-soo said that it may have happened because he was interested in his watch. But Han was still suspicious, and checked him still. In the office, Han told his boss that he had a plan on smuggling 50 kilograms of drugs. And a shocking fact unfolds. It turns out that Han already knew about Yoon-soo's identity from Kyeong-gu, and he was also the one behind the death of Yoon-soo's colleague and mother. And Han planned to use Yoon-soo for his gang's good. Furthermore, after Yoon-soo confessed his true identity to him. Suddenly, Yoon-soo was held captive, and was taken away, and it turns out that it was done by his police colleagues. Their captain Choon asked him for the drug smuggling plan. And Yoon-soo told her that they were still waiting for the Russians' confirmation.
우리 엄마 친새끼는 아직도 안 잡혔어요?
Yoon-soo then asked her back for leads of his mother's murder. 1 year earlier, on the day of Yoon-soo's mother's death, when Choon and one of her subordinates investigated the incident, it turns out that they hid the fact about that murder, saying that it was done by someone Yoon-soo knew.
이건 또 뭐야? 나가자.
The next morning, Yoon-soo gave Choon the leads about the smuggling plan. "150 days after Yoon-soo's release day, the smuggling day. The mafias meet at the harbor, with a lot of boxes that were suspected to have the drugs in it. And suddenly, a lot of police cars appeared, and were ready to ambush them. But then it turns out that the boxes were filled not with drugs, but some adult toys instead. Choon was very disappointed, and was laughed at by the gangsters. On the other hand, Yoon-soo was sitting cozily on a boat, waiting for the drugs to float up on the water. And the transaction continues. After Yoon-soo managed to secure the drugs, Kyeong toasted with Gegard, as a sign of the successful transaction. And right then, Han and Kyeong suddenly murdered their boss, and the rest of the Russian mafia. Yoon-soo then asked Han to shoot his arm, to fool Choon and his colleague that he was shot during a search. Not long after, Yoon-soo was called by Choon, and she showed him the footage of his mother's murder. And how shocked he was, when he discovers that his mother's murderer was none other than Han.
나한테 왜 얘기 안 해? 내가 이를 망칠 거라고. 도대체 나한테 왜 이래?
네 엄마 죽인 새끼 그대로 둘 거야?
When Han was at a party with his gang, Yoon-soo suddenly called him, telling him that he was in danger, and that there's someone in the gang who gave him into the cops. And Han suspected Kyeong right away. Yoon-soo then asked Han to meet him with the drugs, to avoid the cops' raid. By that, the cops' plan to bring Han and Kyeong to a conflict succeeds. At night, Kyeong was called by Han to his office. And there, Han immediately ended him.
너 지금 뭐해, 새끼야? 제발 정신 차려!
Soon after, Han packed up his things, and went to meet Yoon-soo. While Choon and of her subordinates were watching them from afar. Inside, Yoon-soo directly asked Han about his involvement in his mother's murder. Han then confessed the murder, and pointed his gun at Yoon-soo. But then Yoon-soo said that they were surrounded already. Han then managed to shoot the cops dead, fairly easily. But he left Yoon-soo alive, which then he shoots his gun right on the side of Yoon-soo's head, and makes him pass out.
나는 형 믿어요.
Outside, when Han was walking to his car, he was suddenly hit by Choon with her van. And while he was dying on the ground, Choon then took his car key, to take the drugs from his car. But shortly after, Yoon-soo appears and shoots her to death. Yoon-soo then put the gun in Han's hand, and then he covered Han's mouth and nose with his hand, until he died. And the movie finally ends. So, what do you think of the movie? What do you think of the recap? Is it good? Is it brilliant? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and click the bell icon to get notifications for our future recaps. And if you have any movie you want us to recap, please, do tell us in the comment as well. And until next time.